Most guys that go to the gym are emphasizing the wrong muscle groups to effectively create the eye-popping physique that they want. When I train people, I ask them which muscle groups that they want to grow the most, and the most common answers that I get are your chest and your arms. Although training all muscle groups are important, emphasizing some muscles over others may not get you the dream physique as quickly as you'd like. When building a physique that makes it look like you just came out of an anime edit, getting a wide V-taper physique has to be on the top of the list of priorities that you need to have. And that can't be done without building some wide ass boulder shoulders. So this is the second video in a series where we're going to talk about the most important pieces of information to understand each major muscle group when it comes to training in the gym. So this includes covering the anatomy of each major muscle group, their functions as it pertains to training, the top exercises for each muscle, and some practical advice for training each muscle group. So to start, your shoulders has three main parts that move your arm up and away from your body, each in its own unique way. So let's start with the part of the shoulder that you can see from the front, which is aptly named the front delt, or the anterior delt if you want the sciencey term. This is the part of the shoulder that lifts your arm straight out in front of you in what's called shoulder flexion. If you look closely at the fibers of the front delt, you might notice that they slope slightly inwards, meaning that they actually pull your arms slightly across your body as they travel up, very similarly to what your upper chest does, as we talked about in the previous video. When it comes to front delt training, I find that it might not actually be necessary for most guys to isolate and directly target them. If you're following a complete program, your front delts actually get plenty of work in any sort of vertical and horizontal pressing motion, such as an overhead press and a bench press, as most of those motions see your arms go from a relatively low position to a relatively high position up in front of you. This means that for most people, including myself, the front delt is actually the most overly developed of the three, meaning that it might be more time effective for you to focus on the other two parts of the shoulders instead. Now, if you do want to build bigger front delts or just enjoy training them, front raises are a great option, but for most, they might just not be necessary. Next, let's move to the most important part of your shoulders when it comes to looking jacked and juicy, and that's called your side or lateral delt. This is the portion that stands out to give you that really broad shoulder V-taper shape that is so game-changing. The main function of your lateral delts is to sweep your arm straight out to the side in what is called shoulder abduction, such as in a lateral raise. Since shoulder abduction is their main function, including some sort of lateral raise in each of your training blocks will make sure that this all-important part of your shoulder will continue to grow over time. Now, there's a ton of different lateral raise variations out there, so experiment to find the ones that you feel the best and that you can stick to long term. However, if you want my advice and my personal favorites right now, I currently can't get enough of behind the back and crucifix lateral raises. The third part of your shoulder, which is commonly the most neglected of the three, probably because it's hardest to see in the mirror, is called the rear or posterior delt. The main role of this rear delt is to move your arm behind your body in what is called horizontal abduction. Now, if you look at the fibers of the rear delt, you might actually notice, much like the front delt, that the fibers run slightly inwards as well as upwards, meaning that pulling your arm horizontally and straight back behind your body may not be optimal for hitting your rear delt and may shift the load a little bit more to your mid traps. Many people say that you might not need to target your rear delts as they get involved in exercises when training other muscle groups. Just like how your front delt gets hit with vertical and horizontal presses, your rear delts get hit with a lot of back work, particularly rows. However, in my experience, this couldn't be further from the truth. No matter how many rows and back exercises that I did, I always found that my rear delt was underdeveloped compared to the other two heads of my shoulders. This gave me a front heavy look from the side, and it always kind of looked like I was slouching, which I personally hated. I'm pretty sure Jeff Nipper did a short where he compared before and after his rear delt training, and honestly, the differences were astonishing. It wasn't until I started directly training my rear delts that I began looking like I had decent posture again, and my back exercises actually started feeling a lot stronger and a lot better. I did this by training my rear delts with cross-body cable flies, single arm reverse pec decks, and bent over single arm flies. So when it comes to shoulder training, I have two pieces of practical advice for you. The first one, I have to admit, I've actually been lying to you. We've been saying that there's three parts of your shoulders, but there's actually probably another. Lied to you again. There might actually be four more, making a total of 7. There was a study that showed that the delt might actually be broken into 7 distinct motor units instead of simply just 3. So what does that mean when it comes to our shoulder training? Does that mean we have to blow everything up and start from scratch? No. As I see it, this simply means that it's really important to train your delts in a variety of different ways and angles to make sure that all portions of your delts are adequately hit. To do this, set the cable and your arms at different angles and just try a bunch of different exercises to make sure each part of your shoulder is hit as adequately as you'd like. And for the second piece, overhead presses have been taking a lot of heat lately when it comes to muscle hypertrophy, and I just wanted to share my take. When it comes to overhead presses, they mainly hit the front delt with a little bit of side delt and not really any rear delt. Since the lateral and rear delt tend to need more love, they often need more direct attention, and doing overhead presses doesn't necessarily hit those two parts as effectively. I'm not saying that overhead presses are bad for shoulder growth. They're still good, but maybe just not necessarily great. However, I personally train overhead presses since I still want to be able to press things up overhead. And also going back to the 7 parts of your shoulders, it trains your shoulders in a way that a lot of laterals and reverse flies can't do. So getting that extra variety may help your overall growth. So what I personally do to kind of get the best of both worlds, I often target my side and rear delts first in my training sessions, then I do overhead presses after being pre-exhausted. This way, I tend to feel my lateral delts a lot more, as well as feeling my upper back muscles, which personally for me still need a lot of development. But that's another muscle group for an entirely different video. So if you liked this video and found it helpful, I did one exactly just like this, but for your boobs.